The story begins with the words of Rikuta Setsuna. In this world, love, morality, law, and justice all exist, but the true ruler is violence. In one corner of this world, a high school classroom buzzes with excitement. Akita, a top student, has just received his midterm results. Excellent work again, Akita. The teacher beams. You've topped every subject. A true example for this class. Classmates whisper in admiration. He's consistent every time. Since enrollment, he's always number one. Akita smiles politely, bowing his head in thanks. But inside? He sneers. Idiots. They have no idea how far above them I really am. I'll top Tokyo University, secure a future brighter than anyone here could imagine. Success belongs to the smart, and I'm the smartest of them all. Just then, a girl approaches shyly. Akita, could you help me study sometime? He notices immediately, she's the girlfriend of Akasama, a classmate infamous for his violent temper. The moment Akita leaves the classroom, a heavy fist slams into his stomach. Ugh! He doubles over in pain. Standing before him is Akasama himself. You dare flirt with my girlfriend, you bastard? Akita gasps for breath, his thoughts sharp. So even this idiot resorts to violence over a girl. A monkey with muscles, nothing more. He forces a smile. I'll be more careful next time. He turns to leave. Wham! Another blow crashes into his back, sending him sprawling. Akasama looms over him. You looking down on me? Get on your knees! Akita's mind races. Kneel? Does it matter? He may have strength, but in society brains rule. He's nothing more than a trained animal. So he kneels. Calm, collected. That's when a voice cuts through the tension. Are you two finished? Both turn to see Setsuna, the girl who would soon be known as the Violence Queen. She walked up and sat beside Akita, offering him a smile. Akita stared, wondering who she was. Turning to Ikushima, Setsuna challenged him to a fight. Both boys were stunned. Akita thought in disbelief, now I have a one-woman wrecking crew on my side. Ikushima, however, backed away as if intimidated, while Setsuna walked off, leaving Akita to wonder if she had just helped him. He suspected she might be as smart as he was. Watching her disappear into the distance, he whispered a soft, "Thank you?" But Setsuna wasn't finished. She caught up with Ikushima and taunted him for running away. Sweetly mocking him, she told him that karate wasn't a real martial art, especially the type he practiced. In your karate, you only pretend to hit your opponent, and actual contact is considered a foul. To prove her point, she casually kicked a stone, embarrassing him further. Frustrated, Ikushima grew angry, exactly what Setsuna wanted. She challenged him to a real fight. Nearby, Akita watched in stunned silence as Ikushima charged at her with a powerful punch. Setsuna stood completely still. His fist stopped just short of her face, as though he wanted her to flinch, but she didn't even blink. A faint smile appeared on her lips. As regret flickered in Ikushima's eyes, Setsuna grabbed his fist, struck his elbow with her other hand, and forced a scream of pain from him so loud it echoed through the school. She warned him coldly. The real fight has only just begun. Ikushima attacked again and again, but Setsuna dodged each strike with ease, as if she were observing him in slow motion. Growing desperate, he wondered why none of his hits landed. Setsuna reminded him of his second-ranked national status, and said casually, "In my eyes, you're just average." His face burned with anger and embarrassment. Yelling that he would now fight with full strength, he charged forward, using his special move, the lightning thrust, a technique so fast it allowed no time to react. His fist struck Setsuna's face, making her stagger back, blood dripping from her nose. For a moment, it seemed like victory. But Setsuna quickly recovered and knocked Ikushima to the ground with a single devastating blow. She praised him. "Impressive move," she admitted. But then she added coldly, "The pain you caused didn't even make me see stars." As Ikushima lay defeated, she lectured him on proper fighting techniques. "If you really want to bring someone down, aim to knock them out. Weak punches won't do it." From a distance, Akita was fascinated. Setsuna wasn't just unusual, She was a beauty who had dominated a man in combat. Intrigued, he stepped forward and asked, "Teach me how to fight." Setsuna paused, considering. Meanwhile, Akita told himself that fighting might be foolish, but if he learned, it could at least serve as self-defense. Before he could think further, Setsuna stepped closer, placed both hands on his shoulders, and leaned in near. Akita froze, stunned, wondering what was happening. Then, with a sudden smile, she punched him hard across the face, sending him flying backward. He screamed in pain, staring at the blood dripping from his face. Why did you do that?" he asked. Instead of answering directly, Setsuna posed a question. "Imagine watching a lion devouring a zebra. Would you pet the lion and call it a good boy?" Akita scoffed. "Only a crazy person would do that." "That's the correct response," she said calmly, tying it back to their situation. She kicked him again. "Why did you think I wouldn't hit you? After all, I'm the strongest one here." Setsuna explained that in this world, love, morality, and justice didn't protect anyone, because they were nothing but fiction. "Right now, I can make you do whatever I want." "Why?" "Because violence is the only thing that truly rules." Though Akita didn't fully understand, he knew she was right. If she wanted, she could kill him on the spot. All he could do was kneel and beg for mercy. Setsuna smiled and warned, "This is how you'll live the rest of your life." As she walked away, Akita wondered if she was secretly auditioning for the role of a human earthquake. Thinking wildly, he suddenly rushed at her from behind to punch. But she swiftly turned and slapped him so hard that blood spilled from his mouth as he crashed to the ground. Dazed, he thought being slapped by her is probably how superheroes feel when they're training, except without the cool theme music. As consciousness faded, he remembered a dream he once had, that he was strong, free to unleash violence however he wanted, no matter the cost. When he awoke, he found himself in his bed. The next day at school, Ikushima's girlfriend asked about his sudden disappearance. Akita ignored her, his mind fixed only on Setsuna. He convinced himself it had all been just a bad dream. Violence, after all, was for fools. He needed to stay focused on becoming smarter. Yet one question lingered: what was a student from another school doing here? The teacher soon entered with an announcement. To everyone's surprise, Setsuna stepped into the classroom. Introducing herself, she said her hobbies were cooking, sewing, and theater. Then, almost under her breath, she added, "and violence." The class burst into laughter, everyone except Akita, who knew exactly what she meant. Recognizing him, Setsuna walked over smiling. "Yesterday's violence was great," she announced to the class. "We'll have to do it again sometime." Stunned silence filled the room. And so began the story of the real violent girl. Within just a week of transferring, Setsuna had already gathered many friends who adored her. Compliments flowed her way, and she blended effortlessly into the class. But while everyone else was charmed by her presence, Akita couldn't forget the day she appeared out of nowhere and defeated Ikushima. That very same day, Setsuna had also attacked Akita, leaving him with a nasal injury and a crown fracture that still hadn't healed. His body ached from the damage she inflicted, and instead of recovery, the lingering pain only seemed to nurture a deeper hatred inside him. As these bitter thoughts brewed, Setsuna suddenly walked over to him the next morning. She greeted him warmly, smiling as if nothing had happened. Akita was stunned. Had she completely lost her mind? How could she greet him so casually, barely a week after brutally beating him? His confusion boiled over into anger, and he snapped, yelling at her not to ask how he was doing. Loudly, in front of the entire class, he reminded her that she was the reason he was in this miserable state. The room went silent. The air grew heavy with tension. At that moment, Ikushima's girlfriend intervened, demanding to know why Akita was yelling like that. It was only then that he realized just how loudly he had raised his voice. Still, part of him knew it didn't matter. Yelling at Setsuna was like yelling at a brick wall. She would never care. Ikushima's girlfriend turned to Setsuna, suspicion in her tone, and asked about her boyfriend. Setsuna brushed it off as though nothing had changed. Akita wondered if she was secretly some kind of superhero who forgot the people she saved, or beat. But deep down, he knew the truth. It had been Setsuna who humiliated him. And that was a secret he had no intention of sharing with anyone. When school ended, Akita boarded the train home. To his dismay, Setsuna was there too. Watching her from across the carriage, curiosity began gnawing at him. Where does she live? What kind of parents does she have? What's her life like outside of school? Before he could lose himself in thought, the train announced the next stop. Setsuna stepped off. Akita felt a wave of relief, but curiosity quickly got the better of him. Quietly, he followed her. She led him into a busy commercial district, an unusual place for a high school girl to wander alone. Lost in thought, Akita accidentally bumped into another girl, spilling his drink across her expensive skirt. She immediately erupted, shouting that her skirt was costly and demanding compensation. Akita tried to explain it wasn't intentional, but a group of thuggish-looking boys lurking nearby overheard. They stepped out, smirking, and told him he'd have to settle things their way. Before Akita could respond, one of them casually pulled out 30,000 yen and handed it to the girl. The gang member grinned and told Akita he was lucky this time. But next time, if he didn't have money, they wouldn't hesitate to beat him senseless. Akita stared in disbelief. 30,000 yen, just for a shoulder bump? These guys really are idiots. He compared their lack of intelligence to his own sharpness, but reality sank in. He had neither the strength to fight back nor a path to escape. He muttered that he'd pay them the rest later, but they only laughed in his face. Just then, Setsuna appeared. She stood silently at the edge of the scene, watching. Akita wondered if she had come to help. Without warning, Setsuna sprang forward. But instead of striking the gang members, she kneed Akita directly in the face. Blood sprayed from his mouth as he stumbled backward into the thugs. "Why me?" Akita screamed, clutching his nose. "Why hit me instead of them?" His mind spun with questions, suddenly reevaluating every life choice that had led him here. With an innocent smile, Setsuna explained, "I was trying to knock you out in one hit. Unfortunately, it didn't work." Akita groaned. Is this what friendship looks like in her world, where beating someone senseless is a form of affection? Completely dumbfounded, he watched as Setsuna grabbed his hand and tried to pull him away. One of the gang members snarled, "Hey! Are you really messing with us? If you're with him, you're not going anywhere." He stepped closer, tugging at Setsuna's shirt and commenting on how cute she looked. Then, with a sly grin, he offered her a job, saying that if she was struggling for money, she could use it to pay off her boyfriend's debt. Setsuna stood perfectly still, staring at him in silence. Then, tilting her head, she asked coldly, "Are you seriously trying to promote nonviolence?" Before he could react, her elbow smashed into his face. His nose shattered, blood gushed, and he collapsed, screaming. Calmly, Setsuna explained, "Never grab an opponent by the neck. It disables both offense and defense. This was the perfect chance for me to strike." The rest of the gang charged at her. But Setsuna dismantled them one by one with terrifying efficiency. Soon, the alley was filled with groaning bodies writhing in pain. She then turned to the girl whose skirt had been stained. Trembling, drenched in sweat, the girl pleaded desperately, "I'm a woman! Please don't hit me!" Setsuna punched her without hesitation. "Violence is equal for everyone," she declared. Akita stood frozen. Setsuna had just turned 4 people into a bloody mess. He realized then just how terrifyingly strong she was. To him, she wasn't just a girl, she was a human tornado. But what unsettled him most was her complete lack of awareness of what was normal. Once she decided to attack, nothing could stop her. In that moment, Akita thought, she's truly antisocial, a violent girl through and through. Setsuna turned to face him. Instinctively, Akita raised his fists, bracing for another hit. But instead, she asked, "Why are you acting like that? I have no intention of hitting you. Why would I? Then why did you hit me so hard earlier?" Akita shouted back. With the sweetest voice, Setsuna answered, "Because we're friends." Meanwhile, in a dimly lit hideout, the gang's headquarters, The 3 battered members stood before their boss, Shuji. He lounged arrogantly with a girl at his feet, but their pitiful state interrupted his entertainment. Shocked, Shuji listened as they confessed that they'd been thoroughly beaten by a high school girl. At first, he laughed in disbelief. What kind of joke is this? The men insisted she wasn't ordinary. One even claimed she broke his nose with a single blow. Shuji raised a brow. Are you sure she's not secretly a ninja? Before they could answer, the girl beside Shuji coughed lightly. Displeased, he turned and struck her across the face, sending her sprawling like a ragdoll. The rest of the gang froze in fear, none daring to intervene. Straightening his posture, Shuji's expression turned cruel. We'll kidnap her, he said coldly. A high school girl is perfect. And we can even make money off her, filming her. One of his men hesitated. Boss, that's a serious crime. If we're caught. Shuji scoffed. This generation's pathetic. No testosterone, no backbone. If you want to survive, you get stronger. Build muscle. Stop whining. Remember this, if you're holding a woman, you can make her do whatever you want. That's a rule you should never forget. Then, as if the subject bored him, he waved them off. Now get to the gym. The next day, after class, Setsuna approached Akita. Let's have lunch together, she suggested. He refused immediately, but Setsuna didn't take no for an answer. She revealed a bento box stuffed with food, so packed it looked like a survival kit. Akita stared at it, wondering aloud if she was some kind of bodybuilder. Protein helps wounds heal faster, she explained casually, handing it over to him. As they ate, Akita hesitated before asking, Are we eating together, because we're friends? Yes, she replied simply. Pushing further, he asked, Even if we ignore what you did to me before, beating me so badly, why me? Why choose me as a friend when there are people stronger than me? She smiled faintly. Friends aren't chosen based on strength. There's more to it. She started to elaborate, then paused mid-sentence, leaving Akita curious. Before he could press her, she chuckled lightly. Then Ikushima's girlfriend appeared, teasing. Is this a lover's quarrel? Stay out of it, Akita muttered quickly. But Setsuna interjected firmly. It's not about strength or weakness, it's about dignity. Doing the right thing at the right time. That's what matters. Akita nodded slowly, though his mind drifted to the 2 kilograms of chicken packed into her lunch. Ikushima's girlfriend leaned close to Akita, whispering with a mischievous grin. Is this some kind of sexual talk? Then she walked away, laughing. Outside the school, a van waited in the shadows. Inside, Shuji's men debated their mission. One whispered nervously. If we defy Shuji, he might turn on us too. They spoke of his dirty business, how he forced girls into the love trade, trapping them with debts they could never escape. If any dared run, he hunted them down. Fear bound them more than loyalty. The driver snapped. Shut up! Enough of this nonsense. At that moment, they spotted Setsuna. Without hesitation, they drove forward, snatched her off the street, shoved her into the van, and sped away. They celebrated, until, suddenly, one of them was sent flying out the window like a malfunctioning action figure. At the same time, Shuji's phone rang. Expecting a report, he answered casually, only to hear Setsuna's calm, cold voice. I'm on my way to meet you directly, she said. Caught off guard, Shuji asked. You're the girl who beat up my men? Setsuna laughed lightly. Shuji shouted into the receiver. Keep that attitude and I'll kill you. If you care about your family's safety, you'll work for me. Setsuna replied with curiosity. Are you talking about a fight? Shouldn't you introduce yourself before making threats? I can't stand being looked down on by a woman. Shuji spat, ending the call with a smirk. To him, this woman was going to be interesting prey. But what he didn't expect was that another hostage was already in his grasp, Akita. Nervous and drenched in sweat, Akita sat across from Shuji. His heart pounded. This is the worst. I've been kidnapped, barely out of high school. He stared at Shuji, the notorious gang boss, and muttered. It's obvious. Someone like you wouldn't have any job besides running a half-baked gangster squad. Then, swallowing hard, he asked, "What do you plan to do with me?" Shuji leaned forward, eyes gleaming like a predator savoring his catch. He figured he would need 3 million yen to cover medical expenses, doctor fees, and everything else. When he finally said the number out loud, Akita's eyes widened in disbelief, bordering on madness. Leaning forward, Shuji got close to him and suggested that if Akita introduced him to a schoolgirl, the amount could be reduced. As he offered a discount, Akita considered it for 0.2 seconds before realizing he would rather die than talk to another girl right now. But right now, Shuji was more focused on paying Akita back for the things his so-called girlfriend had said on a phone call. With a smirk, he threw a punch toward Akita's face. Panicked, Akita quickly protested. He yelled that Shuji had got the wrong idea. Setsuna wasn't his girlfriend. In fact, before she beat up Shuji's gang, she had beaten him up just as badly. Shuji paused. His hand landed on Akita's shoulder, not with kindness, but with mock sympathy. He said that if that was the case, then both of them were victims of Setsuna. He offered a fake apology, clearly toying with Akita's fear. Akita wondered for a moment whether this meant he was safe now, but the moment shifted. Shuji called the girl over to him. He turned to Akita and said that if he didn't want to be looked down upon by women, he would need to rely on muscle, adding that he needed to start going to the gym. Dripping with sweat, Akita listened as Shuji kept talking. Then suddenly, Shuji called him over and asked a blunt question. Was he a virgin? Caught off guard, Akita admitted that yes, he was. Shuji immediately mocked him for it, pushing shame onto him like a weapon. He cackled like he just won roast battle of the year. Then, in a shocking display, Shuji ripped the clothes off the girl standing beside him and told Akita that this was what he had to do first. Akita froze in shock. Shuji tried to soothe him, saying this was a free service and he shouldn't worry too much. He instructed the girl to go over to Akita. The girl walked slowly toward Akita, who was now completely paralyzed by disbelief. Thoughts raced in his mind. Was this really happening? But he knew if he refused, Shuji might beat him to death. He looked at the girl again, and noticed the bruises and scars on her body. She had clearly been through far too much. Seeing Akita hesitate, Shuji barked that there was no need to overthink. This girl had already serviced plenty of others. She was just a tool, nothing more. But as the girl approached, Akita reached out, took her hand, and gently stopped her. He told her that she didn't have to do this. Shuji, surprised, asked what the problem was. Akita responded firmly. He didn't want to do this. Not because he was some kind of feminist, but because forcing someone into anything was simply wrong. Shuji was confused, thinking that this kid was broken. Even the girl looked shocked. No one had said no before.